Hi everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to go over a bag making basic. Today we're going to talk all about crossbody straps. Now, let me forewarn you, there are a lot of ways to make crossbody straps. There are so many variations to these straps. I'm going to show you 3 different ways I personally make crossbody straps, but I want you to know that I have shown you other ways in some of the tutorials as well. So if you don't see the one you're looking for, I do apologize, but I wanted to make this kind of as simple as possible, but also give you as much information as possible. So if you've been around on the channel for a while, you know that crossbody straps are my favorite type of straps. Crossbody bags are perfect. As a mom, I need to be able to wear my bag, but then fling it behind me so I can bend over and pick up and deal with whatever mess I gotta deal with. So crossbody straps are my go-to. I like that they're comfortable. I like that they're pretty easy to make. They don't require a whole lot of material, but you do need longer material. So in today's tutorial, I'm gonna show you 3 different crossbody straps. First, we're gonna go over a quilt cotton crossbody strap. So this is just using cotton woven fabric you would find from the quilt store, just basic quilt cotton. We're gonna interface it and I'm gonna show you how we double fold it and we make a crossbody strap. The second version is going to be a crossbody strap made out of waterproof canvas. Now personally, this is my favorite. It's quick, it's easy, it's probably the cheapest strap to make, to be completely honest. Waterproof canvas is not very expensive and you don't require any interfacing for it, so you really just need the material and the hardware. So we're gonna go through that, and then the third one we're gonna go through is a vinyl strap, and we're gonna try something new for me. We're gonna try using a little bit of Edgecoat on the vinyl strap. So this would also be kind of what you would do if you were making a leather strap. So we're gonna play with this. We're gonna play with different sizes. We're gonna make one strap that's 3/4 of an inch thick, and then we're gonna make the other 2 at 1 inch. 1 inch is usually the most standard size for crossbody straps. It's thick enough so that it doesn't cut into your shoulder, and it works fine with bigger bags. If you have a really small bag, like a little, a little pouch kind of size bag, then a 3/4 of an inch strap is great. I personally would not make a crossbody strap at 1/2 of an inch, just because now you're getting into a very, very skinny, design that could really honestly start to hurt you, right here, whichever side you wear your crossbody strap on. It can start to kind of cut into your neck, and we don't want that, right? We want this to be comfortable. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Anything you want to say, leave them down in the comment section. I'm assuming there's going to be quite a bit of questions, so please leave them down in the comment section. If I can't answer it, other people watching the video definitely can. Like I said, there are so many other ways to do this. So if you want to know how to make it in a leather strap, that might be another tutorial. If you want to make a two-tone where it's like one fabric on one side and then the other side's another fabric, we might have to do that in another video. We have done that in a couple of other tutorials, so I will have those linked down in the description if you just want to go check out how to make those crossbody straps. But like I said, I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. I want this to be a video if you're just messing with a bag and you want to quickly put a crossbody strap on it, you can just click over here, pick the strap, and then, just make it real quick. Crossbody straps do take a little bit more time, and a lot of times in patterns, you'll see they're saved for the very end of the pattern. So it's kind of like you make the whole bag, and you're so excited, and then it's like, ugh, the crossbody strap. So my suggestion is just make the strap first. Maybe even make the strap on the day that you cut all the material out. So for me, I will cut all my material out the day before, and then the second day is when I will sew. I usually don't cut material and sew on the same day because it's both kind of a process, and by the time I'm done cutting out material, I'm kind of tired. But on the day that you cut the material out, that's also a great day to sew your crossbody strap. So that way on your bag making day, you can just clip it on at the end and you're done, and you get excited about the little bag that you made. All right, so let's get started. First, we're going to talk about the quilt cotton crossbody strap. Okay, let's first talk about the length of a crossbody strap. The length I see material cut out most often is about 56 inches. So you want to go anywhere between really 45 inches to 60 inches. If you're going to be making this bag and you know you need it to be a little bit longer, go towards the 60 inches. If you're making this for somebody who's a little bit shorter, maybe like a kid, or you just know you want it to be a little bit shorter, go towards 45, 48 inches. So 56 is usually a really safe number. 56 is going to satisfy a lot of different body types, a lot of different heights. But if you specifically know you're making it for somebody who needs it longer or shorter, then just figure out that range. But 45 to 60, I don't know, 65. If you don't want it to be too long, because even though we can decrease the size, we can only decrease it so much. You know what I mean? So 56 is kind of a good go-to number when you're cutting out your material, regardless if it's quilt cotton or vinyl or whatever. 56 inches is a good length to cut your material at. Okay, so for the quilt cotton version, here's what I have. First, I have my material. So this is just regular old quilt cotton, quilting material from the local fabric store. I like to get about a ½ yard of this, not because I need a full ½ yard, but because I'm going to need the length. So let's look at this real quick. This material is 44 inches wide, right? And 44 inches is not wide enough. So I'm going to have to combine strips. I'm going to cut 2 strips of this, and I'm going to sew them together and then cut that down to the length I need it to be. So I have my ½ yard of fabric here. If you wanted to get a 1/4 yard, just make sure it's not a fat quarter. Make sure it's a full 1/4 yard of fabric because you want to keep the width of your fabric, especially if it's a standard quilt cotton. It's going to be 44 inches wide most likely. You really want to keep that 44-inch width. A fat quarter is usually 18 inches by 22 inches. So if you have 22 inches, you're going to be cutting 3 pieces of them. And we want as few seams as possible. So 44 inches wide, we just have to have 1 seam in there. That's good. I also like to interface my quilt cotton straps with SF101. SF101 is going to just beef it up a little bit. You don't want your strap to be really thin. Even though we are going to be folding it like 4 times, we don't want our strap to tear easily and be thin. And this SF101 is just going to make it so that it's beefy enough to withstand a lot of wear and tear. Now, another option in addition to the SF101 is to add some Decoville Light. With Decoville Light though, you want to be careful. You don't want to use the same width of Decoville Light as your strap. So we'll talk about the chunkiness, the width of the strap in just a moment. For the Decoville Light, you're going to want to cut it skinnier because remember, we're going to fold this like 4 times. We're going to fold this strap up a bunch and then we're going to sew it. And if you have a bunch of layers of Decoville Light in there and you're going to sew over it, it's going to gum up your needle and it's going to give you a big headache. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. So I will show you how to add the Decoville Light, but it is completely optional. You do not have to put Decoville Light on your strap, but it is kind of a fun little like accent to make it a little bit more of a professional feel and not just a kind of a clothy feel. For this quilt cotton strap, we're going to be making it 3/4 inch wide. So with that, we're going to need the right hardware. So I have 2 swivel hooks and 1 slider. I always use this for my crossbody straps. 2 swivel hooks, 1 slider. All 3 of these are 3/4 inch wide. So that's what I'm using with this strap today. All right, here are the basics that I'll be using for making my strap today. My top thread, so this is going to go through the needle on the top. This is Mara 70 weight. It's a little bit thicker since the straps are really just all top stitching. We want that thread to look really nice on it, so I like to use this. It's also a little bit more durable. And then for the bottom thread, so this is going to be in the bobbin, I'm just using this regular Gutermann you'd get from Joann's. I'll have links for both of these down in the description. For needles, it really just depends what you're working with. For this strap today, a Schmetz Universal or Microtex 8012 is going to be fantastic. We don't need it to be super thick. Once we start beefing up our material and we're getting into vinyl and stuff like that, you might want to up it to a 90-14 because we will be folding it and then folding it and then folding it. So you really want to make sure your needle doesn't break during that. The other item I have all the time when making straps is my 6" by 24" ruler. Any brand will do. You just really want to make sure you can cut these long straight lines. Okay, so let's start with cutting our quilt cotton for our first strap. Now, you can iron this first if you like. It's probably best if you do. But honestly, straps are pretty forgiving, so if you don't have it perfectly ironed, you'll be okay. First thing I want to do is straighten out this bottom edge here. You see how it's all kind of wavy and wonky? I don't want that. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line up the grid marks on the folded edge over here. So right here on the right, that's where the fold is, and then here's where the selvage is. So I'm lining up my grid lines so that it's straight on the folded edge. And then I'm just going to push it down close to this edge, just like that, making sure I have fabric peeking through on the bottom the entire way. And then I'm just going to grab my rotary cutter. And I'm going to cut along this bottom edge of my ruler. And then I can throw that away. Now I have a really nice long edge here. So when we're working with fabric for our strap, we're going to be double folding it. So you're going to take your desired end width. For us, that's 3/4 inch. You're going to multiply it by 4. So for us, that's 3. So 3 inches. That's how wide we want to cut our strip of fabric. We want to cut it 3 inches so that when we fold it in half, and then we fold that in half again, it'll end up 3/4 inch. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line up the 3 inch long grid mark along the bottom straight edge. And then I'm also making sure my grid mark over here on the fold on the right is lined up with that fold. So it should be a nice perfect rectangle. And then I'm just gonna trim this strip right here. There we go, there's one. And since I know that this is not long enough, this is only going to be less than 44 inches, honestly, I need to cut a second strip. So I'm just gonna repeat that and cut a second strip. Okay, so there are my 2 strips. I can get rid of the rest of the fabric. So now we're going to enlist the help of our iron. So this is how I do it. I press my strap and then I iron on the woven interfacing. You can cut your woven interfacing to the size of your strap and then iron it on. I know a lot of people prefer to do that. I just prefer to iron it straight onto the strap and then I cut it out afterwards, which to me it's about the same amount of work. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just gonna give my fabric a press first so it's nice and flat. You can see it's a little wrinkly. I'm gonna do this with both of my strips of fabric. So now I'm gonna take my strips of fabric and I'm going to lay them on my ironing board, wrong side up. I'm gonna get them kind of close together so I don't waste a lot of material here, making sure they don't overlap at any point. They can be close, but they don't need to be touching. And then I'm going to grab my woven interfacing, and I honestly just unroll it, and it's on the floor, and then I just drape it over. Again, I'm trying to, you know, not use too much of my interfacing. Keep everything nice and straight. And I'm really only worried about whatever is on my pressing mat right now. And now with steam, I'm going to use my iron and just press my SF101 onto the back of my quilt cotton. All right, once I have that first section pressed on, I can just pull it up. And then I just move the whole strap up, pulling and unrolling my SF1 as I do it. And then you'll see it gets kind of mucked up, so you need to straighten out your fabric. Again, making sure they're not crossing over each other, keeping them as straight as possible. And then I'll just press this as well. My only concern right now is just pressing this interfacing onto the back of my quilt cotton. All right, once that section's done, once again, I'll just push the whole unit up. Okay, once that's done, I can remove my pressing mat. And now I'm gonna flip it over so I can see the right side of my straps. And now I just use scissors to cut these out. Now you can definitely grab your ruler and a rotary cutter and that would probably be quicker. For me, personally, I just like using scissors to cut this out. So I'm just cutting right along the edge of my fabric with my scissors. So you can see there's a lot of ways you could do this. You could definitely just fuse your interfacing onto your fabric in the very beginning and then cut out your straps. That probably requires the least amount of cuts. So you would just fuse this on to like the whole half yard of fabric and then you have it ready to go. And if you were going to use that fabric for a lot of different straps, that's definitely the way to go. Just fuse your SF101 to your quilt cotton and then cut out the straps as you need them. But if you're just going to be using a little bit of fabric for one strap, then you don't really need to do that. And that's another thing. If you're a bag maker and you know that you're only ever going to use quilt cotton if it has woven interfacing attached to it, then just do it. You know, just especially if you have a heat press, just fuse on a whole bunch of woven interfacing onto a whole bunch of your yards or half yards of fabric and then refold it and put it back in your sewing space so that way it's ready to go whenever you need it. Because I know for me, every single time I use woven fabric in a bag, I fuse my SF101 onto it. So as you can see, I'm just going along the edge here, cutting the strap out. All right, once you have your straps cut out, however you did it, what you want to do next is cut off these selvage bits. So you can just grab a ruler and a rotary cutter and just cut off the selvage bits. We don't want to accidentally have those showing later. Unless you do want to have them showing, in that case, leave them. I never mind a little bit of selvage showing in my bags. Okay, so before we move on to talking about the Decoville Light, let's attach our straps. So if your straps have a directional print, like for me, these little flowers, like this is the top, this is the bottom, make sure you line them up so that the direction is going in the same way. And then you're gonna take one of your straps, and you can see both of mine are right side up. I'm gonna take the one on the right, and I'm gonna fold it down, and I'm gonna rotate it perpendicular. So it's gonna go down 90 degrees, and it's going to line up with the other strap just like this. We're gonna have a nice little corner here. And then I'm gonna grab a fabric marker, And I'm going to mark where the bottom edge of my bottom strap is on my top strap. So you can kind of move this over a little bit. So here is the bottom edge of my bottom strap. I'm just gonna mark a little tiny notch right here on the right side of my top strap. And then I can take a ruler, and it doesn't matter if this top strap is lined up with anything. And I'm going to go from the top left edge of my top strap down to that bottom mark. So it's a nice little diagonal. And I'm just going to trace along my ruler just like that. And that is going to be my stitch line. So now you can grab pins or clips, whichever is more convenient for you. Line up this corner perfectly. I'm gonna use pins here. And just pin these together. There we go. Just to hold it in place. So now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're just gonna sew right along this marked line, just to stitch these two straps together. All right, once you have that sewn, go ahead and remove your clips or pins. And now we're going to cut 1/4 of an inch to the right. So towards this corner here that's just flopping around, we're gonna cut 1/4 of an inch that way. So I just eyeball it. You could definitely use a rotary cutter and your ruler here if you prefer. We just wanna cut off that edge. So now what I'm gonna do is just press this, and I'm gonna press this seam open. And this is the thing, you can do this with vinyl as well. It doesn't have to just be quilt cotton. So if you have vinyl, waterproof canvas, leather even, you can do this as well. You can combine two strips like this. I see a lot of times with vinyl, people will combine the strips with a straight seam. So instead of this diagonal, it'll be a nice straight seam. Whatever is most comfortable for you. You just want to get them attached. So there's that. So I'm going to flip it to the other side, and I'm going to press open that seam with my fingers. And then I'm going to press it with my iron. We just want to get this as flat as possible. We're going to be folding this a lot, so we want it to be nice and flat. So now I'm going to go back to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this diagonal seam on both sides. So I have 2 rows of top stitching, both 1/8 of an inch away from that mid seam right there. All right, there we go. Now that this is top stitched, let's talk about the Decoville light. Decoville light's completely optional. Feel free to completely skip this step if you'd like. So I want my Decoville light to be the finished size of my strap. So my strap is going to be cut at 56 inches long. I'm going to lose at least 3 inches, probably like 3.5 inches from that when I'm folding in the ends. So I want my Decoville light, I'm going to make my Decoville light 52 inches long. As you can see, this is not 52 inches long. So I will have to piece together my Decoville light. That's not ideal. Ideally, you will have one piece of Decoville light that is the entire length. But because I don't have that, this is just what we're going to do. So I'm grabbing my long ruler again, and I want to create just a nice straight edge along this bottom here. So just like I did before, I'm just going to cut along this edge. And then I'm going to cut a strip that is 3/4 of an inch wide, all the way down the side. So I think I said I wanted my strip to be 52 inches long, right? I think I said 52 inches long. So this strap that I just cut right here, this is 35 inches long. So I need to cut another 17 inches, right? Okay, so I'm going to cut another strip that is 17 inches long. There we go. So I can just use my ruler to help me with that. Just go along and cut a 17-inch strip. There we go. So when these two strips are combined, they'll be the length of my finished strap. So let's grab our strap and just put this to the side for just a moment. Okay, so now let's just cut down our strap to the desired length. So I said I want it to be 56 inches long, so I'm just going to fold my strap in half. So I know half of 56 is 28, so I'm just going to use the grid marks on my cutting mat here to help me find that. And you could also just measure this off from one end. So if I cut this by folding in half, I'm going to have 2 short straps here. If you wanted to keep a longer strap, you could definitely do that as well. So let's just do that. So I'll show you. I'm going to take one end of my strap and I'm going to fold it wrong sides together over. And I'm going to use my cutting mat to get this end right here all the way to the edge. And the folded edge is going to be at 28 on my cutting mat. Okay, so it might be hard to see because it's just off the screen, but I have my short edge. It's right along the 0 marker on my cutting mat. My folded edge over here is at 28. So now I can just use my ruler and my rotary cutter and just trim this down. So now I have this strip here, which is 56 inches long, And I have this extra short strap here, which would be great for a wristlet or a couple of things. You could also use it for the D-rings in your bag. You're gonna have to cut strips for your D-rings, so save this for another project. Now I'm gonna grab my pressing mat and I'm going to press my strap in half, wrong sides together, long sides together, just like this. And the nice thing about quilt cotton is if you press this with an iron, it's going to stay really nicely. So now I'm going to open up my strap and I'm going to measure in 1.5 inches from the short edges. And again, this is only if you're using the Decoville light. If you're not, just skip this and move on to the next step. But I'm going to take my Decoville light and I'm going to line it up so that it's 1.5 inches away from the edge. And then the long edge is right against that midpoint mark that we made by pressing it in half. And I have my Decoville light glue side down on the back side of my strap, just like this. And now I'm going to use a pressing cloth, which is just a scrap piece of fabric, to cover the back of the Decoville light and give it a press from the back. We're just trying to adhere that Decoville light to our strap. So it doesn't matter if you adhere it to the bottom of the middle or the top. You just don't want to put it right over the middle, because when we fold this, we're going to fold this like this. See? It's going to double fold over. So we want to make sure we're not folding our Decoville light. So mine is just lined up right on the bottom edge of that midpoint line. And if you recall, my Decoville light is a little short, so I have my second strap here. I'm just going to line that up. I'm just going to butt it up against the other end, just like that. And then press it in place, just like I did with the other strip. And then we should have about 1.5 inches left over here on the short edge as well. Okay, there we go. So if you skip the Decoville light, welcome back. Ignore this right here. So now what we're going to do is on these short edges, we're going to fold in about 1/2 inch. Anywhere between 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 inch. I just eyeball it. And we're going to fold in that short edge, wrong sides together, and press. This is how we're going to hide the raw edges of our fabric. Do this on both short edges of your strap. So now you're going to take your raw edges and you're going to fold them up to meet that midpoint mark, and then just press with your iron to hold it in place. And you're going to go down the whole strap doing this to both sides. And when you fold these short edges in, you are still keeping that short edge fold as you fold down along the long edges. If you're folding around your Decoville light, you might see it doesn't quite reach the middle. That's okay. We'll be okay with that. You can always cut your Decoville light just a little bit skinnier. Maybe at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance instead of 3/4 of an inch. But I'm just wrapping the fabric around the bottom edge of that Decoville light and then pressing it down. If you didn't use Decoville light, then you're just going to fold it to the midpoint like you did on the other side. And then once you have both sides pressed in towards the center, now you're just going to press the whole unit in half. We're just trying to get the whole unit folded again. So now when we fold this, these short edges should be folded in. There shouldn't be any raw edges there. The long edges are all folded in. So you shouldn't have any raw seams anywhere. So now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch along all 4 edges. So we're going to top stitch along the long edge and the short edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now that the strap is sewn, all we have to do is attach the hardware. Typically, I do like to use rivets to do this, but I know that not everybody uses rivets, so I want to show you how to do it with sewing. So first, you're going to grab your slider. Now, this is a 3/4 of an inch slider. My strap is 3/4 of an inch wide. We want the slider to fit. You don't want to use a 1-inch slider and then a smaller strap, because then it's going to be all wonky and it's going to fold in, twist. It's not going to be good. So take your slider and you're going to hold it right side up. So you notice that the middle bar here, it has little prongs that are going to fold over. That's the wrong side. So the right side is just the side that looks nice and finished. And then grab your strap and you're going to lay your strap right side up as well. Now, your right side of your strap is wherever your top thread is. If your top and bobbin thread are the same, then either side is going to be your right side. But my top thread is a green thread. My bobbin thread is a white thread. So This is the top. And I want the bottom of my strap, so where my bobbin thread is, it's gonna go up against that middle bar. So you can see, I'm inserting it on the right side here. The bottom of my strap is going against that middle bar. And then I'm going to fold over this end onto the left side so that I'm just folding my strap wrong sides together, just like that. Now remember, I left about an inch extra off for the Decoville light. So like right here on the end here, there's no Decoville light here. My Decoville light starts right about here. So I'm just gonna fold right to the end of my Decoville light like that. There we go. So I have just under an inch overhang here, which is fine. I'm going to clip this to hold it in place. And now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch a little rectangle here to hold this in place. If you want the stitching to look really good, make sure your bobbin and top thread are the same color, the same thread, because we're going to be sewing it on the back. We're going to be sewing it where this fold over is here. We want to be able to see that. So I am just going to be tracing the side and the bottom top stitching that I already have, and then I'm going to stitch as close as I can to this middle bar. To really help with this, you're going to want to use a zipper foot. And when you're sewing, you don't really want to leave it, you don't want to pull your slider like this, because then the bottom edge of your slider goes underneath and you can't see it and you might sew over it. So you want to pull the slider from the bottom away like that so you can see the piece of metal that's going to be closest to the needle. You don't want any of this metal hiding underneath the needle. So I'm just going to go top stitch a nice little rectangle right here to hold this nice and secure. If you'd like, you can also make a small little X on the center here if you have enough fabric folded over to do that, but a top stitch should be fine. So the reason I like to use rivets so much with my straps is because I am not a very good top stitcher. I don't know if you can see this, but my rectangle is not entirely perfect. It's a little wonky, and that's okay, but luckily my bobbin thread blends in really nice with the back, so you really can't see that wonky rectangle on the strap. Rivets are great because you just pop it in, and it's not that hard to center this, so rivets just for me look better, and they're easier for me to do. But I understand not everybody uses rivets, so this is the way you would top stitch that. So now that you have your strap, we're going to turn our strap so that it is right side up. So the side that has the fold over right here, that's the wrong side. We're going to turn this right side up and go all the way to the end of your strap that doesn't have anything on it, keeping it all nice and flat. Take one of your swivel hooks and add it on to the end. And the swivel should be on the right side. So again, if this is your top stitching, top needle thread, this is where it's going to go. The swivel hook goes there. And now we're going to just feed the strap through the swivel hook, a generous amount. And then we're going to flip over our strap so we're looking at the wrong side. Again, keeping everything very straight. So I'm going to go back to that end over here that doesn't have anything attached. And I'm going to fold my strap wrong sides together. The key here is just keeping everything as straight as possible. So now I have the bottom of my strap against the other end of the bottom of my strap that has this fold over here by my slider. And I'm just going to feed this in on the same side where that fold over is, on the right side of my slider. And then I'm just going to pull it up, generous amount. And then I'm going to feed it through the left side going down. Again, keep everything really straight. You don't want to twist anything here. And then pull it out. So now when I straighten it all out, here's my little swivel hook over here. So I've got the swivel hook in a fold on the strap, and then I've got my slider in the middle, everything straight, and then I have this end over here. So again, this is the top side of my strap. That's where my green top stitching is. I'm going to take my little swivel hook and I'm going to add it on and just bring it down to the end of where my Decoville light is. If you're not using Decoville light, you can just bring it down an inch or so. And again, the swivel is on the right side. And then I'm just going to fold my strap wrong sides together over just like that. I can grab a couple clips to hold it in place. And now just like I did by the slider, I'm going to top stitch a little rectangle here. Again, if you want to make a little X, feel free to do that. I have a little bit more space on this side, so I might do that this time. But once again, we are top stitching from the back, so your bobbin thread is going to show over here. So like I said, if you use a nice bobbin thread that really hides into your fabric, it's not a big deal. But if it's going to stand out and you are kind of a wonky top stitcher, just be prepared. All right, there we go. So there's my top stitching this time. You can see I tried to do a little X there. It's not bad, but thankfully on the right side, you can't really see it at all. It blends in really nicely. So I'm pretty happy with that. So that is how I would make a quilt cotton strap. This is probably the one you're going to use if you're a beginner. You probably don't have the rivet press and all the tools and stuff like that. You haven't invested in it yet. You just want to try it out. So this is a great beginner option. If you do add that little bit of Decoville light, it feels very professional. It has almost like a vinyl feel, but it still has the softness of the quilt cotton from the material. But it's going to be a lot more durable and it's going to withstand a lot more use. You know, the nice thing too about using the Decoville light is that as the strap is used a lot, it's not going to kind of tube up and crinkle up. You know what I mean? Which you might have if you're just using quilt cotton. I would not suggest making a crossbody strap out of just quilt cotton and no interfacing. I feel like it's not going to last very long and you're not going to like the feel of it. And you put so much work into the bag. I know it seems like, I just want to be done with the bag. This is a lot of extra work for the crossbody strap. But you want to make sure the crossbody strap matches the, you know, the level of your bag. If you put a lot of work into your bag to make it really, really polished and beautiful, just add the extra few minutes for the crossbody strap because it's just such a beautiful accent to bags. So here's one version. So now we're going to move on to my favorite way of making a crossbody strap. My favorite crossbody strap is waterproof canvas because waterproof canvas does not need to be interfaced and it is very inexpensive compared to most other material. You can see here I've got this striped waterproof canvas. You can get it in prints. There's a lot of options out there. Usually solids are what I normally go for, but I thought this would be fun. We could like cut it like that. I thought that would be a fun strap. So I've got my waterproof canvas. I have a full yard here. You obviously don't need that much. The nice thing too about waterproof canvas is that the width of it is very generous. So the width of this waterproof canvas is just under 60 inches, which means I don't have to piece together my strips, right? I can just have one strip cut from this and I'm done. So I have my waterproof canvas. Next up, I have my hardware. I'm using 1-inch hardware today, so I have my 1-inch swivel hooks, my 1-inch slider, 2 swivel hooks, 1 slider, just like with the quilt cotton one. I will be using rivets because, again, this is going to be my favorite way of making a strap. So I have this medium 20-pack rivet set. This is from Emmeline Bags. These sizes are 9 millimeters, so the top is 9 millimeters, and then the post is 8 millimeters. I use a 10 millimeter die from Cam Snaps with these rivets. Now, you don't have to use a bigger die than your rivets. The reason I use these 10 millimeter dies is because Cam Snaps doesn't have a 9 millimeter die, so that's the only reason, and it works fine. You can always use a bigger die for your rivets than your rivets. You don't want to use a smaller one though. Like, so if this is a 9 millimeter rivet, I don't want to use an 8 millimeter die because then it's going to create a little crease, a little pinch look on the top of my rivet, which I don't really want. I want a nice, smooth, pretty rivet. So 10 millimeter dies for my 9 millimeter rivets. If you have 10 millimeter rivets, then use that with your 10 millimeter dies. I know I've confused some of you guys with that in my Cam Snaps tutorial, and I didn't mean to. I'm really sorry about that. I just use the bigger die because they don't have the 9 millimeter die. That's the only reason. If I was to buy 10 millimeter rivets, I would use that with my 10 millimeter die. That's all. So that's what I'll be using today. And then of course I have my trusty Cam Snap press, which I love so much. If you're interested in learning about this, I have a whole video going over all the ins and outs of this and all my favorite dies to use with it. And it's a very fun video. So this is my press. It's from Cam Snaps. I'll have a link for this and a link for that video down in the description. Okay, as you can see, this is a really big piece of fabric. And what I'm gonna do, if I fold it in half once, it's still too long for my ruler. So I'm going to take the whole waterproof canvas here and I fold it in half, right sides together. It doesn't matter if it's right sides or wrong sides together, but I am lining up this raw edge over here, trying to keep that as straight as possible. And then I'm gonna fold the whole unit in half one more time, so it's double folded. Okay, so I have my waterproof canvas double folded. You can see it's not even at all over here, so I'm gonna trim this down real quick to get a nice straight edge on all my layers. To do that, I'm just using a long ruler. So I'm just lining up one of my grid point marks on the fold down here. And then what I do is once I have it all lined up, I kind of push down on it and then I'm gonna peel up the sides just to make sure I've got all 4 layers in there. I don't want any of these cuts to be, you know, behind the ruler because then then we're not actually cutting a straight line. So now I'm just gonna use my rotary cutter and trim off the edge. There we go. So now we are going to double fold this just like we did with the quilt cotton. So in order to do that for a 1-inch strap, I'm going to need to multiply that by 4. So 4 times 1 is 4. So I'm going to need to cut a 4-inch wide strip. And I'm just doing width of fabric here, which like I said, is just under 60 inches. So this is going to be a longer strap. I'm okay with that. You can definitely trim it down if you want. I just leave it though, honestly. I just leave it because sometimes I might trim it down a little bit and then use those little trim pieces for the D-ring holders for the bag. But the longer strap is going to be fine. All right, there we go. Now I can just let that go. Okay, so now I have a nice long, yeah, this strap is gonna look cool. I like that. I'm excited to use that on a bag. I don't know what bag I'm gonna use it on, but I'm excited to use it. So now we just want to cut off these selvage edges over here. So since I know my strap is a decent amount longer than I need it, I can just kind of cut it wherever. I'm not measuring, I'm just making sure it's straight and trimming off these little raw edges. Okay, now with waterproof canvas, you can definitely iron it. You can just don't iron the back of waterproof canvas where that coating is. Don't iron that. But you can iron the front of it, so you could definitely fold this in half like this and then iron this folded edge over here. I find that when I do that, it doesn't hold the fold very well, so I just mark the midpoint with a marker. So I'm just gonna grab my ruler and any sort of marker. I'm gonna use this friction marker here. This is not a fabric marker. It's not a fabric marker, but it works fine on the back of fabric that I've used, like thicker stuff. So if you're gonna use this, be careful, but this is what I like to use. So I'm just gonna mark a midpoint going along the entire length of my strap, just so I know where it is. So the midpoint is going to be 2 inches in from the edge. Sometimes your strap might be a little wonky, so I just kind of pull it up using my ruler to try to get it as straight as possible. Okay, now typically whenever I'm double folding my strap, because now what we want to do is we want to take these long raw edges, we want to fold them wrong sides together to meet that midpoint line. Typically what I would use is this very, very sticky double-sided tape, because if you use this, it's going to fold over, it's going to stay, you don't have to worry about anything. However, it can be kind of a nightmare with sewing machine needles. It's very gummy. So a really heavy duty sewing machine is going to be fine with it, but more domestic machines might gum up and then it's just a pain. It will break your thread, it'll clog up the needle will get jammed and stuck, and then it's just a mess. So I don't want to do that to you guys today. We're not going to use this. You definitely could use glue here. You could use the Dritz 1/4-inch wash away tape because that is easier to sew over. I just find that both of those don't quite stick as much as I want them to. So in this situation here, we're just going to use a whole bunch of clips. Just a lot of clips. And I know not everybody likes clipping this much, but it's fine. So I'm just folding these long raw edges, wrong sides together up to meet that midpoint line. And I'm just kind of pressing it with my fingers and using my clips. Now, I know that there are some of you who have arthritis. This is not going to be a good option for you. So if that's the case, you might want to try using glue or tape. If you do, try using a non-stick needle or a 9014 needle. That might help with the gumminess. And one of the tips I have if you're going to be sewing over that very, very thick tape is don't stop. So that's where the problem arises, is if I'm just going at a nice slow pace when I'm top stitching, it's fine. But as soon as I stop to kind of rearrange and then start again, it like sticks and then the thread breaks and then it's a nightmare. So if you're gonna try to use that tape, which is great, I love that tape, go slow with your top stitching, but don't stop. So you can see I'm adding a clip every 3 inches or so. So it's not like, right on top of each other. I am spacing them out. I'm not so worried about this being a perfectly flat seam. I'll worry about that later. Right now I don't need it to be perfect. And I'll deal with the short ends after I clip the long ends. So after you do one side, just go to the other side and clip the other side, wrong sides together, so those raw edges are meeting in the middle. So once the long edges are clipped together, let's work on these short edges. So I'm just going to unclip by the short edges. And just like I did before, I'm just going to fold this down probably about a 1/2 inch here. I'm not measuring it, but about a 1/2 inch just to make it easy. Try to get it nice and straight. And then refold those long edges back in towards the middle. Just trying to hide all of my raw edges. So there's one edge here. You see it's all folded in. I can do the same thing on the other side. I'm just going to fold this in about 1/2 inch, and then I can refold the long edges in. So now that that's done, all we have to do is fold the whole thing like a little hot dog bun. So these raw edges are going to be tucked into the bottom here. Fold it up, and then just include each of the folds into the clips. So this is where you'll find everything kind of smooths out a little bit more. And you'll have more clips to work with to get this nice and straight along that double fold edge. All right, so once you have it all clipped and ready to go, all of your raw edges are hidden inside. You don't see them anywhere. Now we're gonna just top stitch along this. We're gonna top stitch along all 4 edges. So the short edges, the double fold long edge, the single fold long edge, and an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Again, I'm just using like a 3.5 millimeter stitch length. You can definitely go longer if you'd like. I'm gonna again be using the same green thread. It doesn't really go with this strap, but I think it'll be fine, and I just don't feel like changing out my thread. There we go. There's our strap. Now, I'll be honest, that's not the best top stitching I've ever done. I don't know if you can see, there's some kind of wonky lines there, but that's okay. That's okay. It's still really cute. So now what we want to do is we're going to attach our hardware just like we did before, except we're not going to use any stitching this time. We're just going to use our rivet press, which makes this very easy. So grab your swivel hook and hold it right side up. So the folded over edges of that middle bar, that's the wrong side. Hold it right side up. Take your strap, and with the wrong side, so for me that's where the bobbin thread is, the wrong side's going to go up against that middle bar, and we're inserting it from the right. So I'm pushing it up through the right, and then it's going to go over that middle bar. And we can just have it go over 1 inch, 1.5 inches, whatever you're comfortable with. There we go. I'm only going to use 1 rivet today, so I don't need it to go over a terribly large amount. I'm just going to grab a clip to hold it in place. Okay, I forgot. I have to get the other rivet press out too, because this one has my hole punch die on it, and it's just right there, so I'm just going to use that. So as you can see, this press here has a hole punch die on it. You don't have to have a hole punch die. It is easier if you do, but you could also just have like a handheld hole punch. So I'm just going to take this and punch a hole right in the center of that little fold over. So now can you see there's a hole punch through the fold over and also the front here. So now I can just grab my rivet, and I'm just going to take my rivet with the long post and push it through that hole just like that. So that's the male end of the rivet. Now I have the female end of the rivet. I'm just going to flip this over and attach it to the male end just like that. So now it's holding it in place really nicely. You can definitely set this right now if you'd like. We can go ahead and do that. Since I have 2 presses here, a lot of times I'm using 1 press, and if you're kind of going in between dies, like your hole punch die and your rip press die, what I like to do is I like to punch all the holes and then just push in the rivets without setting it, just like snap them in there. And then after I have all of that done, then I'll change out the die to the rivet die, and then I'll press all my rivets. It's just easier because I don't really like going back and forth a lot. So now I'm just going to take this, put it into my press. You can see it goes in just like that. And then I'll just press it down. So you can see nice and easy, punched in right next to my slider. Okay, so now I'm going to take my strap right side up. So the fold over side here, that's the wrong side. So strap is right side up. I'm just stretching it out. It's like a little snake, isn't it? Look at that. And then I'm just keeping it as straight as I can till I get to the very end. Then I'm going to grab my swivel hook, and I'm going to insert this over the end. The swivel is on the right side of my strap, and then I'm just going to feed that through, pretty generous. And I'm going to fold over my strap, so I'm looking at the wrong side. Again, keeping everything nice and straight. I'm going to fold my strap wrong sides together. So I brought the short end up to the slider now, and I'm going to insert it on the wrong side. So where the fold over is here, we're going to insert that short edge of the strap in through the right side of the slider, pull it up generously, move everything down a little bit so you have enough room to insert the short end to the left side, going down this time. There we go. Pull that out. Perfect. So now we can kind of pull on our swivel hook. You can see here we have the swivel hook in a little fold on the strap. In the middle is our slider. There we go. And then on the end we have nothing. So on the end with nothing, we're going to attach our remaining swivel hook. So the swivel hook is going to go with the swivel on the right side of the strap. So if the right side of your strap is up, swivel hook up, fold it over about an inch or so, whatever you're comfortable with. There we go. And just like we did with the slider, we're going to grab our hole punch. We're going to punch a hole centered on this little fold over here. There we go. I've got a hole in there. I'm going to grab one of my rivets, insert that into the hole. So I inserted the male end of my rivet, and then I'm going to grab the female end of my rivet and just snap it right over that end. And then I'm going to grab my press with the rivet die on it, and I'll just press this down to secure it. And there we go. That's my personal favorite way to make a crossbody strap. I love waterproof canvas. You guys know I like to use waterproof canvas in the weirdest ways. I love it as exterior bags. I love it for all kinds of things. Waterproof canvas, I think originally was meant for like outdoor furniture, boat covers, things that are going to be outside. I just like to use it for bags, and it's fantastic for straps because you don't have to interface it. You don't have to worry about all these little details. It's quick, it's easy. Waterproof canvas with rivets, in and out, done. Very affordable. I know that the rivet press, this thing is an investment, but rivets are usually not very expensive. Once you have it, I mean, it's just, the most expensive thing here is going to be your hardware, most likely, your swivel hooks and your slider. So, my personal favorite. Let me know if you give this one a try. Now let's move on to the third and final crossbody strap that I'm going to show you today. Okay, so the vinyl option is very similar to the waterproof canvas, except this time we're not going to double fold it. So here's what I'm using today for vinyl. Again, I'm going to be using my rivet press. I'm going to be using the same 9mm rivets and a 10mm die. If you have a 9mm die for your 9mm rivets, definitely use that. If you have a 10mm die and you have 10mm rivets, definitely use that. I only use the 9mm rivets with the 10mm dies because that's what I have. Next, I have a roll of vinyl. Again, we want this to be 56 inches long, so make sure you have a nice full roll of vinyl if you've been using it a lot. If you don't have a long enough piece of vinyl, you definitely can piece it together just like we did with the quilt cotton strap, but I do prefer a nice continuous piece of vinyl because honestly it's just less work. I just try to get this done as quick as possible, you know what I mean? A nice supply of clips to hold it all together, Mara 70 weight thread for the top, so this is for the top needle, and then just regular Gutermann thread for the bobbin. A marker, again this is not a fabric marker, this is a friction marker. It works fine on the back of vinyl, I'm not worried about that. And then I have my rivets, which I already told you about. And then I have my hardware, which is my 1-inch slider and 2 1-inch swivel hooks. Again, we'll be doing 1-inch today. And then we'll see about this, but we might give this a try. I have very little to no experience with Edgecoat, but we will have raw edges on this one, so we'll have to give it a try. And so with this, I have this like light brown Edgecoat, and then I have this little Edgecoat tool here to apply it. I have used it a couple times, so it's not the first time, but I'm by no means an expert with this. So I'm going to be requiring some tips from you guys in the comments section. Okay, so with all the other straps, we've been doing double folding. We find the midpoint, we fold the edges in, and then we fold it again, right? With this one, we're not going to do that. So with leather straps, with vinyl straps, you don't need to do that. If you have a really, really thick leather, you don't even need to fold it once. You can just cut it to the length you need it and then edge coat the sides and you're done. That's a beautiful finish. This is not very thick. This is not thick enough for that, and it's not leather, it's vinyl. So this vinyl does have, like a felt back. So it does have, raw edges, which is what we're going to try to kind of cover up with the edge coat. Again, I don't know. I don't know how to do this. We'll see. So what I'm going to do this time, because I'm not double folding it, I'm just going to single fold it, is that I don't need to multiply my desired width by 4. Instead, I just have to multiply it by 2. So I'm using 1-inch hardware. And so 1-inch hardware is going to require a 2-inch wide cut of my vinyl. If I wanted to double fold this, which you can with vinyl, you would cut it at 4 inches, because if you're going to double fold it, you're going to multiply it by 4, okay? You can do that with vinyl. I have made a lot of crossbody straps where I double folded the vinyl, but to be completely honest, it's a little stiff. You know what I mean? Like when you're moving it around the whole strap, instead of like the strap kind of forming to your body. When you kind of pull up the bag, the whole strap just like goes up like that. You know what I mean? It just kind of all stays in the same shape. So you can do it, but I'm going to try doing it with just a single fold today, which again, I don't really do because I just normally use waterproof canvas. But we're going to try this today. So I'm going to cut, I don't know how long this is. I think it's probably too long. So yeah, so this width is actually just under 56 inches. So this is going to be fine. So I'm just going to cut a strip that's the length of my vinyl that is 2 inches wide. So I already have a pretty straight edge here up the top, so I don't really feel like I need to trim that down at all. I'm going to grab my long ruler like I did before, and this time instead of double folding it, because I don't think I'll be able to do that, I am just going to carefully move my ruler as I'm cutting. So I'm gonna line this up along this top straight edge, and then I'm gonna grab my rotary cutter, and I'm going to carefully cut along the bottom of my ruler as far as I can get it, making sure I don't accidentally move my ruler out of the way. All right, now once I have that, I can pick up my ruler and I can just ever so slightly just kind of, see that? Just notch this bottom edge down just a tiny bit. I don't want to move the top strip at all. I just want to just see where that line is. So now I can line up my ruler with that line and with the top edge. And now my ruler, you can't see, but it's over off the edge so that I can continue cutting the right width. There we go. So now that's done. So now I have a nice long strip that is 2 inches wide and about 56 inches long. Now, I'm not going to fold in my short edges. So for the other two straps, we did fold in the short edges to hide those raw edges. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm only going to fold this once, and that's it. So I'm just going to fold the whole unit in half, just like that. I'm going to grab some clips, and my unit is folded wrong sides together. And I'm just going to go along the entire length of my strap, clipping this together, long sides together, wrong sides together. All right, once I have the whole strap completely clipped together, now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch along all four edges like I've done previously. So I'm top stitching along the raw edge, the folded edge, and the short edges, all at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright, so now we've moved on to the segment where the teacher has become the student. I am going to attempt to add some edge coat to this. It's probably easiest if I do the edge coat before I add the hardware. So I have watched a few different tutorials on edge coat. I'm not going in this completely blind. I think I'm just going to do one layer of edge coat because honestly I just don't have time to do a whole bunch of layers today with this video. But the first thing I want to do is I want to trim down my cord. So there are going to be just a couple sections where one side is longer than the other, where I folded it over, where we have the raw edges. And just so you guys know, I am progressively losing my voice today. So if I sound very rough by the end of this, I'm just losing my voice today. It's just one of those days. So stick with me if you feel like it. If not, I totally understand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim down the longer edge wherever I see it. So there are just going to be some spots here where one of the raw edges sticks out more than the other. And what I want is both of these to be the exact same, length. I want this edge here to be one clean, smooth edge. So that when I apply my edge coat, it just looks almost like one piece of leather, maybe? I don't know. So you can see I'm not really trimming much. I'm just kind of almost like scraping off the edge that's just a tiny bit longer. All right, there we go. I got it all one width. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna get a piece of cardboard to do this on. I realize I should have a bigger piece of cardboard than this, but we got what we got, okay? This is how it works around here. So here's my edge coat. I'm gonna shake it up. I have no idea if you're supposed to shake it up, but I shake up everything. Does it say don't shake it up? All right, so shook it up. I'm gonna open it up. Oh, dang it, it's got one of these things on it. So now I'm gonna take my little tool here and I'm going to just dip it in the paint and coat it. And then I'm just gonna roll it along the edge. Now, I realize my vinyl is orange and this is brown, but I think it works fine. I mean, I think it works fine. So I'm just gonna dip it and roll it. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? I mean, it actually does look pretty good. And the more layers of this you add, the better it looks. So as you can see, I'm rolling it on, and as I roll it on, it looks nice and thick and pretty, but then the vinyl kind of absorbs it, and it becomes a little bit more of a grainy look. And so what I've seen people do is they say, let this dry, let your first coat dry, and then sand it very lightly, and then add another coat. And you could do that multiple times. And as you layer up those coats on that smooth surface, it's gonna create like a rubber look. I mean, if you have a professional bag, you've probably noticed this. If you haven't noticed it, go grab any store-bought bag and see if you can notice that. But yeah, it'll create like a little rubber effect on the sides of your strap. So this little device doesn't hold a whole lot of paint, but you don't want a whole lot of paint because you don't want it to start dripping down the edge of your strap, you know? Okay, there we go. Now I have the edge coat applied to all the raw edges. I'm gonna let this sit for about an hour. I don't know how long it takes to dry. I'll look it up, but I'm gonna let it sit for about an hour. And like I said, if you want a really professional finish, you're gonna sand it down lightly and then do another coat, maybe do a third coat. I don't think I'm gonna do that, but we'll see. I'm gonna take my little tool and I'm just gonna go rinse this off. This has the paint all over it, but I'm just gonna rinse it off in our like utility sink, not our kitchen sink. It might be in our kitchen sink. But like even with just that one coat, it looks pretty good. I mean, it looks better than it did with just the raw edges. I feel like just one coat even makes it look pretty finished, like it's one piece of vinyl. So that's awesome. I love that. Okay, so I've let this dry and I grabbed some sandpaper. Now this is a 400 grit sandpaper. This is what we use when we're like finishing, painting like cabinets and things to give it a really, really nice soft finish. That's what I figured. I don't know what grit. I'm just gonna use 400. It's gonna be fine. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna gently go over the edges with my sandpaper just to smooth it out. So you can see I'm not doing it a whole lot. I'm just kind of lightly going over this. This shouldn't take the paint off. It should just make it nice and soft. Okay, so now I think I am actually going to apply a second coat of my edge coat. This actually dried pretty quickly. I gave it about 20 minutes and it dried completely. I mean, dried enough for me. So I'm gonna give it a second coat and let that dry, and then we'll attach our hardware. So just like before, I'm just gonna dip my little tool into the paint and go over the edge another time. I don't know if you can see, but this time when I put the paint on, the vinyl is sucking in the paint less. So the first time, the vinyl was very thirsty, right? That vinyl just kind of sucked in all that paint. And so the edge still looks like a raw edge, but it's just a different color, right? This time, it's kind of layering it on more like a waxy look, which means it's probably gonna take a little bit longer to dry, but I bet if you did it a third time, then you would have that really nice, thick, almost like rubber that goes around the edge. That would look beautiful. Okay, so now that I have that all painted, I'm just gonna let that sit for 20 minutes to an hour. We'll see, I'll check back in on it, and then we'll attach the hardware. All right, once your edge coat is all dry, now we can just attach the hardware like we have the other straps. And then once again, I'm gonna be using rivets. So just like before, I'm going to grab my slider and I'm going to take my strap and I'm going to take the wrong side, so that's the side that has the bobbin thread, and I'm going to slide that up so that the wrong side is against that middle slider there. And then I'm just going to fold over this end of my strap about 1 inch. There we go. And now I can grab my hole punch and just punch a hole that's centered on that little fold over, just like that. go. Now I can take the male end of my rivet and just pop it right in that hole, grab the female end and snap it on the end just like that. I'm gonna grab my other rivet press that has the die in it, and I'll just press down this rivet. There we go, easy peasy. Now I'm gonna take my strap, and I have the wrong side up, and I'm going to keep it nice and straight as I go to my other end over here. And then I'm gonna grab my swivel hook, and I'm going to attach my swivel so that the swivel part, the hook part, is on the right side of my strap. So I'm looking at the upside down, the back of my strap right now. And I'm just going to slide this on. And then keeping my strap nice and straight, I'm pulling my strap wrong sides together so that it comes up to the back here where that fold over is. Slide it up, just like that, through the right side of my swivel. Pull it a generous amount. And then go down over towards the left. Again, keeping your strap straight. If you ever have a twist, you're gonna have to undo this and redo it. I want everything to be straight. So we have the swivel over here, the slider in the middle, and then the raw edge over here. So all we have to do is take that last swivel, slide it on so that the swivel part, the little hook, is on the right side. Fold over this edge about an inch, wrong sides together, just like that. Grab your hole punch and punch a hole so that it's centered on that fold over. I'm going to grab my rivets and insert the rivet just like I did previously. And now I can just set the rivet. There we go. All right, there we go. 3 different crossbody strap options. They're all pretty simple, to be completely honest. There's nothing really complicated about any of them. As you know, my favorite still is the waterproof canvas because it's just the most professional feel and the quickest and the cheapest. But I'm really loving this vinyl strap here. I want to show you. Because I only used vinyl, it has a really nice looseness to it. And I used that Edgecoat, which wasn't entirely dry, but that's fine. And I really, really love how this looks. I mean, I do feel this looks very, very professional. That edge right there on the side looks really nice. It doesn't look like a raw edge. I don't know, like I like the drapiness of this. So I'm excited to try this out on a bag. The nice thing about the vinyl is that it does have a drape to it that you don't really have with the quilt cotton because we did add that Decoville light, but you don't really have to worry about the durability of the vinyl. So that's why we added all that interfacing to our quilt cotton strap because we don't want it to rip and get all smushed and weird. But with the vinyl, you don't have to worry about that. So I'm excited to try out all 3 of these straps on bags. So I hope this was helpful for you. I know a lot of you guys ask a lot of questions about crossbody straps. I'm hoping this video will be just like a nice, easy go-to for you. If you don't really want to find it in one of my videos, you can just click over here. Couple different options. There you go, quick and easy. So thank you so much for sewing with me today. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.